Have you ever wondered what kind of game you would get if you combined Among Us with Cluedo? Well, keep wondering because today's game won't answer that question. My name is Groudon and I'm reviewing Steam games in alphabetical order to find the hidden gems among the piles of garbage, and today's game is 1, 2, Blame. Let's begin. Among Us. If you haven't heard of this game, you must have been living under a pretty big rock, because it was all the rage during the dark times of pandemics and lockdowns. But what you might not know is that it actually originally released in 2018, but didn't see much popularity until the mid-2020s. And of course, when anything reaches that level of popularity, clones and copycats are going to try and steal a piece of that delicious, money-flavoured pie. So it was probably to nobody's surprise that when social deduction game 1, 2, Blame released in 2021, it was very quickly labelled as an Among Us clone and promptly ignored, receiving only 6 reviews on Steam. At least that was the story over on Steam. In the Google Play Store, however, it saw a reasonable level of success, with over 100,000 downloads and 2,500 reviews, which tells a fairly different story. While it might be tempting to have this review turn into a constant discussion of who did what better, I'd prefer to take a look at 1, 2, Blame in isolation as much as possible, to give it the fairest chance of standing on its own 2 feet, before then going all Scooby-Doo on it to see what's revealed by ripping the rubber mask off. So, of course, let's begin as all things should, at the title screen. Or I'd like to, but first we have to deal with a welcome gift of 1,500 gems, so it's great that the first thing we learn about the game is that it has microtransactions. You can bet that we'll be taking a look at those later. Right, so, title screen. Oh, but I have to enter my date of birth first. Sure, whatever. Okay, now title screen? Okay, yeah, sure, time for a quick play guide because I'll totally remember this in 10 minutes when I finally start the first game. Okay, now we're finally on the title screen, and it's actually not too bad. Definitely optimized for mobile with the well spaced out bright buttons, but there's a decent level of functionality and customization to be found here. In fact, one thing that 1, 2, Blame does particularly well is the character customization. Even from the very beginning, there's a pretty substantial range of tops, hats, hairstyles, accessories, facial features, and even pets to choose from, to really add personality to your character. Of course, there are plenty that can be unlocked via gameplay or purchased in the cash shop, but we'll take a look at those later. Of course, we can't forget about the options menu, although I wouldn't call it anything to write home about. The usual basic suspects are here, but I do appreciate the addition of separate sliders for players' voices, mostly because 1, 2, Blame features proximity voice chat, which can be used both in the lobby and during the game itself. I love this addition, simply for the sheer number of possibilities for shenanigans it opens up. Making yourself heard by having conversations with yourself while walking around, planting false clues on others, or finding your allies and having a quick strategy meeting are all possibilities, as are eavesdropping on someone else's conversation. That said, the game also caters to players who may not have a mic by including in-game text chat as well. However, this doesn't allow for the same proximity benefits. Would have been cool if when someone was within visible distance, you could click on them and then send them a private message. Because we've kind of steered in that direction anyway, let's talk about matchmaking and the actual gameplay. Firstly, there are both public and private lobby options available. At the moment, public lobbies are useless because you need at least 5 people to be able to start a game. The last time this happened was November 2023 when 6 players were online, and the previous time that happened was in January of 2023. 10 months without enough players to start a round is pretty rough, but again, these are the Steam numbers and there is cross-play available, so it may not be a true representation. That said, I do take pride in knowing that our little community event had 7 Steam players, and that is the highest daily player count since October 2021. In fact, at one point, we actually had a complete lobby of 10 players, so it's only fair that I introduce the wonderful people that joined me. So, say hi to 2BFan69, R51011, Luke C. Wolf, Matt Batma, Rousey Som, Fang_Tooth, Bartozek, Jazzy County, and Dez. Plus, Zoyboy, who kindly subbed in for a few rounds. In a nice touch, while you're waiting in the lobby, you're able to change outfits, chat with other players, and modify the game rules, which we'll come back to later. So let's see how an actual round plays out. When each round begins, every player is randomly assigned a role, either an agent, an accomplice, or the killer. There is only one killer per round and one accomplice, and everyone else is an agent. agents have the simplest but most important role. Wander around the mansion, searching for and collecting clues by completing minigames, and then taking these clues to one of 2 computer stations to be uploaded. In a neat touch, you can carry up to 3 clues at once, reducing the amount of backtracking required and adding a nice element of risk-reward to clue gathering, because you have to remember that as an agent, you always have the looming threat of death lurking in the shadows. Speaking of death, let's talk about the killer. As you may have guessed, your role is to kill all of the agents. Because there is still a glimmer of light in your cold, hard heart, you do have a 45-second cooldown between kills. This means it's a race between you and the agents. The game ends either when they manage to piece together all the clues, or when you manage to kill all the agents. Thankfully, you're not alone, as the third role, the accomplice, is basically a decoy killer. Accomplices can do everything the killer can, including killing agents. The difference is that if a body is discovered and an accomplice is voted out, the game continues, whereas if the killer is voted out, the game ends. Well, possibly, because 1-2-Blame puts an interesting spin on the voting. After voting someone out, there's a secondary round of voting where players must decide to either put the accused into a temporary timeout jail by locking them up, or to straight up unalive them by choosing the neutralize option. If someone is put into the naughty corner, they'll spend the next minute of the game trapped in a room, whereas if the jury decides to send the player to a farm upstate to be permanently retired, things are a bit more serious. If the accomplice is voted out, nothing happens and the game continues. If the killer is voted out, the agents win. If an agent is voted out, the killer wins instantly. So if you decide to send a player over the Rainbow Bridge, you have to be super confident, and a vote to neutralize won't be taken lightly. However, if you do prefer more traditional rules where the game continues if an agent is voted out, there's an option for that as well. We've got the core concept of the game down now, so let's discuss some of the extras. Firstly, if you're an agent that has an unfortunate accident while working the case, you'll be able to continue supporting your substantially more fleshy counterparts as a ghost. As a ghost, you're still able to find clues, but you're limited to carrying only one at a time. You're also able to make ghostly noises, which don't really do anything from a mechanical perspective, but they are pretty great for haunting the killer and making them look super sus, as the sounds can be heard by all nearby players. There are also items that are randomly scattered over the map at the start of a round, which can give some pretty good perks, but you can only carry one at a time. There's a bulletproof vest that saves a player from death, vials of poison that the bad guys can use to circumvent this, screwdrivers for accessing special vents, master keys that unlock doors, and even a first aid kit that can bring even the most mortally wounded agent or accomplice back to life. On the killer's side of things, you do have access to sabotagers to cause power cuts, lock doors, and disable cameras, as well as a special map that can show the position of players to make tracking them down for a stealthy kill a little bit easier. But probably my favourite part is that killers and accomplices can also find and upload clues, which makes for an incredibly sneaky tactic for blending in with the agents, which I most definitely don't abuse in order to win. Because I'm not the killer, that was Dez, I totally saw them vent. As with any multiplayer game, the game itself only tends to be as fun as the people you get to play with. In the case of 1-2-Blame, unless you happen to have a group of at least 4 other friends you can convince, you're probably not going to be playing anything. That said, if you can get a group together, you'll probably have a pretty great time, as there is plenty that 1-2-Blame gets right, even if it's a bit rough around the edges and could use some more polish. As an example, if you happen to be playing on mobile, you will get an ad at the end of each round, which for a few of the people who joined, caused them to be kicked back to the title screen rather than to the server lobby. And considering that the mobile version is free compared to the $4.99 Canadian on Steam, it's not surprising that more people gravitated towards the mobile option. We did also find a bug where after converting a private lobby to a public one, there was no longer a lobby host and nobody could actually start a round. In terms of the game itself, I personally enjoyed the added mechanics and the flexibility of the rules that allowed us to tailor the gameplay to our liking and add extra depth to the gameplay, even though it did take us a few rounds to come to grips with. One thing that felt like a bit of a miss is that the number of clues required and the number of accomplices don't automatically scale with the number of players in the lobby. Instead, this needs to be manually adjusted using the rulebook before a round begins. At the end of each round, players will earn points towards completing tasks, which can earn them premium currency or other unlockables. So, let's take a look at the cash shop, shall we? Thankfully, the devs seem pretty transparent here, as there is only one type of premium currency, making the conversion between real money and in-game rewards fairly easy to translate. The smallest pack size of 625 gems costs $2.49 US, but doesn't seem to be enough to actually let you buy anything. Not great. On the other hand, the most expensive pack of 35,000 gems will set you back $99.99 US, plus tax. Not unusual and not extreme. But what I dislike is that many of the basic costumes cost 875 gems, just over the 625 pack, forcing you up into the next tier. And of course, the final 2 costume packs require another step up, because 1,250 just isn't quite enough. In fact, if you wanted the Neko Girl pack, even the 1,250 and 625 pack will only net you 1,875 gems, 100 short of the required amount, forcing you to, you guessed it, buy another pack. So despite winning a point for not obfuscating things through multiple different currency types, they lose major points for being overly greedy with their pack sizes and pricing. And yes, I know this is a common microtransaction strategy, but that doesn't mean we should roll over and accept it. We should call it out for what it is: predatory. At least the cosmetics are purely cosmetic and don't also give the player buffs, like reducing the kill cooldown or increasing the number of clues you can carry. I'd better shut up before I start giving anyone ideas. So on that note, it's time to wrap up this review by giving 1-2-Blame its final rating. Accomplice, out of 10. It can do everything the killer can and brings new ideas to the table, but isn't distinct enough or good enough, and the game carries on when it's dead. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the end of the video. Today, I'd like to thank our noble knights Azazel, Lampyrides, Negi Malevolent, Theo the Cat Guy, and Zest, as well as our 2 Knights of the Holy Grail, Freaky Feline and Loveheart Gonzi. If you'd like to join this gaming crusade, you can check out the membership options below for more details. You'll also find a link to some channel stats and our Discord too. Lastly, I want to thank you for joining me on this weird gaming adventure through the depths of Steam, and if you've made it this far, here's a sneak peek of the next game. Until next time, take care.